What's up? What's happening? Hello. Today I'm going to show you array methods in JavaScript. Let's get started. So as always, as in my previous videos, I got index.html that links to the devdelight.js file. I'm going to open that file right now. And I have a browser open that also loads the code we're going to be writing here. To open the Chrome console, you just right-click, inspect. So the first method we're going to look at is forEach method. And the way it works is pretty simple, actually. It just goes through each array element and executes a function on it. So basically, let's say we have an array here, a simple array, 1, 2, 3. Then we execute forEach. And here we're just going to print out every element in the array. Now if I reload this here, you see we have 1, 2, 3. Very useful method and is utilized pretty often. Second method we're going to look at is map. It does something similar as forEach, except it creates a new array. Let me show you. Don't forget to assign results to another array. So we can, over here, just start modifying our elements. For example, let's multiply all of them by 2. So now if we print out our array 3, we'll see in the console 2, 4, 6. As you can see, the map went through all the elements here, multiplied them by 2, and assigned it to a new array, which we printed out and see here. I'm gonna edit out all the previous code so our console log doesn't get too populated with data, okay? Clear this as well. So the next function we're gonna look at is filter. And what this does is it kind of gives every element in the array a test, and if it passes that test, it will be added to a new array. Let me demonstrate. So let's go with the original 1, 2, and 3 elements, and then array 5. So let's return only elements that are bigger than 1. And print this out. Let's run it. Boom. So the test was only return element that's bigger than 1, and that's obviously 2 and 3. So as you can see, a new array only has 2 and 3. Let's continue. So reduce is a tricky function, but what it does is it takes every element in your array, runs some function onto it, and turns it into one single value. I think demonstrating it will be easier to understand. So here we go, we're running reduce. So the parameters in the function, you have to pass it an accumulator. So accumulator is the value that gets returned from each single call. And this is the current value or element, as we used to name it before. So let's say we want to add all these numbers together. So we take accumulator and we add it to element and return. And the result will be 6. Accumulator basically remembers each value and adds on to it. It's kind of like a sum in this case. And then it just starts adding elements. It adds 1, then 2, then 3, and reduces it to one value, right? So that's why it's called the reduce. But reduce has also options to provide, or where you can specify what you want the accumulator to initiate with, what you want the accumulator to start with, a specific value perhaps. I would suggest looking up JavaScript documentation if you want to know more. Now reduceRight, it's same thing as reduce, except it does it from the right side. So by what I mean by right side is it basically starts going through the array from the right side, meaning starting from 3 to 2 and then 1. Let me show you really quick. So if we close this here, if we clear this and refresh, we get the same answer. That's reduceRight. I'm sure there's certain situations you would use this depending on what kind of data you're working with and if the order matters. Now every is a test to see if all of the elements pass a certain type of criteria. So for example, so if you have an array 8, you just can console log. So one test we can do is see if all the numbers are less than 5. And if you refresh here, it'll be true. Now let's say, what if you want to test if all the elements are more than 5? It should fail. False. The reason the 6 is still being printed out is because I forgot to comment this code right here. Let me just comment all of this. Right, next element we're gonna look at is sum. Sum is like every, except it only checks if one of the elements or some of the elements pass the test. It doesn't need to, we don't need to pass every test like we do in every. So let's say we have the same array as we did with every. Now we choose sum, and let's say we want to test if some elements pass that they're bigger than 3, and obviously 4 over here is bigger than 3, so it should pass. True. Now do some elements pass that they're bigger than 5? No, they don't. False. Simple as that. indexOf tests to see if there's elements that exist in the array, and if they do, it will return the index of that element. So let's name it something else instead. Array of words, for example. Let's say, hello, what's happening? What's up? Right? And we want to print out indexOf, let's say hello. Does that exist in an array or not? If it does, it will tell you where it exists. At element 0, because hello, that's an element 0. So if you put what's up in here, it will show us index 2, because what's up is index 2 in the array. Now you might be wondering, what if the string does not exist? Well, in that case, you will just get -1. Let's change that to back to what's up, back to index 2. All right. Now, what is concat? It's simple. It just merges two arrays together. Let's say we have array delight. Let's say that has a string delight. And then you have an array of numbers, let's say. Or better yet, yeah, let's say we have an array of numbers. This is just random stuff, you know. You can play around yourself. And now we want to concat both of those together. So if we refresh, as you can see, it's an array that contains both of the elements. lastIndexOf, it does very similar to what indexOf does, except it looks for the last index in the array. So almost like from the right side. Let's make it, say we have a bunch of numbers, 1, 2, 3, 1, 4, and we're going to look for number 1. We want to know where the number, the last index of the number 1, it should be 0, 1, 2, 3. It should be the third number, third index. Refresh, boom, we got it. Unshift, it's a really cool method because it lets you easily add elements to the beginning of an array. So let's say we have an array shift, right? And we got 4, 5, 6. Now we want to add numbers to it in the front. What do you want to add? Let's add 1, 2, 3. And shift, it will add those elements 1, 2, 3 to the array and shift. But if you print it out, it's also going to return how many elements are in the array. So if you refresh, it will print out 6 because there's 6 elements. But if we just print out the array itself now, the new array has all our elements. So we don't even need to print this out. Let's refresh again. Boom. We added 1, 2, 3 to the beginning of the array. So the next method is shift. Can you guess what it does? Well, it does the opposite of what unshift does. And basically it removes the first element of the array. So if we print this out now, it will just have elements 2 and 3 because shift is removing the 1. And if you call it again and print it out again, then we're going to have 3. next method is pop. And what it does is it removes the last element of the array. So let's say we have elements 1, 2, 3 as always, and let's pop it. Boom. And if we print this out now, we're only gonna have elements 1 and 2. What if we just do it here? Can you guess what will happen? If you just console log array pop, it will print out what element it removed. So right now that array is 1 and 2. All right. So what do you think the method push does then? It will actually push the values to the end of the array. So to the array pop, let's say we push number 4, and then we push number 5, and we console log array pop. What will happen? Oops, that's my mistake. Let's refresh again. So that's what happens. Pop removes the 3 and push adds 4 and 5 to the end of the array. That's why we have values 1, 2, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3 got removed, 3 got removed. So 1, 2, pushing 4, 5. Very useful methods, by the way. Both shift and shift, pop and push. Well, all 4 of them. Alright, let me clear this. Comment this out. Actually, let's combine this, right? Because push and pop go together. Just like shift and unshift. But let's move on to the next method, join. So what join will do is take all the elements in the array and combine them together and turn it into a string. So say we have elements 3, 4, hello, 2, 5, friend. All right, and then we print out and join, and we join the array. So what we'll get is a string. This is all one string. It's not, because if you printed out an array here before we join it, then we would get an actual array. But instead, right here, join turns it into a string. In fact, let's create a string to show an example for the next method, split. So let's say str is our string, and we do join. So let's print this out, right? Just so you can understand it better. So if you have an array, then we join it and assign it to a string, str. So what will the split do? Take a second and tell me. So split, I kind of tricked you. It's actually not an array method. It's a string method, right? Because it operates on a string. And what it does is it turns the string back into the array. So for example, let array new, right? That's how we define an array. What we can do is array new. Well, we don't even have to do that. Like, we can just straight up say str split, and then if we console log array new, it turned the whole string into one element. Now you might be asking, but that's not what we had here. We had all those elements separated, because in split you have to provide it a separator. that you want to split the strings by. So for example, we're not providing anything here, so it just takes the whole string and puts it into element 0, right? But if you actually wanted to reverse it back to this, what we would have to do is provide it a separator, which is obviously here, the common separator is a comma, right? So let's pass a comma to the split, save, well, and let's refresh. Boom. See, it took that string, it split it by the comma, and turned everything between the commas into an element. Very, very useful methods. Join and split. They're like brothers from another mother, you know what I mean? So the next method is slice. What it does is takes the array and slices it by the values that we provide. I'll show you in a bit. And creates a new array based on that. So let's look at this for a second. Let's say array slice, and so we have elements 1 through 4. So for example, we can just give it one parameter right here, right? This parameter is where to begin the slicing. So if we just put 1, what do you think will happen? That's an index number 1, that's just 1. Let me comment out all this other stuff right here. Let's refresh again. So as you can see, it sliced the whole array starting from here. It just took 2, 3, 4 and extracted it. If we put 2, then we'll just slice it 3 and 4. So it's the beginning of where to start the slicing. It also has another parameter, which is where do you want it to end the slice, because right now it just stops slicing our array at the very end. But we can also tell it stop slicing it at the same value, for example. Why did that show an empty bracket? Because the end value, so this is the beginning value, which is index, which is 0, 1, 2. So it's telling it to start at 3. However, the end value means slice up to that. So what's happening here, it's not slicing the 3 as we want, because it tells it not to slice up to here. So what we need to do is, so what this will do is begin with index 2, which is 0, 1, 2. So it will begin 3, and it will say slice up to index 3. So we'll just slice number 3 here. You see? If we wanted it to slice and get number 4 as well, then we would change the end to 4. Right? So remember, slice parameters is start and end, but this is up to the end. All right. So if you just wanted to slice the whole array from index 3, for example, we would just do that, and we'll just get index 3, which is number 4. Now method splice, even though it sounds very like slice, it actually modifies our array. Because as you can see, slice, it returns a new array, but it doesn't actually touch or modify our old one. Splice, however, actually modifies the actual array. So maybe a better example, let's see, if we went back to slice, if we actually print out slice right here, so here it will return a new array, slicing the numbers. Oops, fix that. So you see, that's the new array, but the original array is still 1, 2, 3, 4. What splice does, it actually modifies the content of your current array by removing and replacing existing elements. So let's say we do array splice, and it has, the way it works is you give it the beginning index and how many elements you want to remove. So let's say beginning index will be 1, which is number 2, and let's remove all 3 elements. What will happen? Oops, I named this wrong. Splice. See, they even sound alike, but I personally only use slice. So let's refresh, and as you can see, right here we spliced 1 and how many elements? Starting from 1, meaning number 2, and 1, 2, 3 elements. So the only element that's left in this array is 1. And all of this is coming from slice. You can also use splice to replace elements. So for example, right now, right, if you refresh this, this is our splice array. In fact, let me make it more clear. Print it again. That's our splice array, right? We can actually use splice method again to replace that number 1. And the way you would do it is you select how many elements you want to replace. In this case, we want to replace 1 element, which index, which is actually, our index is 0 at this point, right? Because there's only 1 element. And what do you want to replace it with? Let's replace it with number 13. And now if you print it out, you'll see that 1 will get replaced by 13. Actually added it. So yeah, splice, you can also add elements as well. So the first, actually, that's my mistake. The first parameter you pass to splice is the index. Then you pass how many elements to replace and what element to replace it, to replace the index with. So in this case, what we did is we put the index 1, even though there was no index 1, and how many elements to replace? We put 0, and then number 13. Now, what if we replace 1 element? What would happen? Same thing, right? So if you want to replace our number 1 right here with 13, we would just change the index to 0. Let's refresh. Boom, there it is. So Splice is a very dangerous tool because it modifies your original array, something you usually don't want to do. That's why I prefer to use Slice. All right, let's move on. We get to reverse. And what do you think reverse method does? Well, pretty obvious, right? It reverses the array. And as you can see, the array is reversed. Now, the JavaScript sort can be confusing for beginners because it does not operate the way you think it does, right? So, for example, let's say we have an array full of strings, right? So let's say over here we have Dmitry, Igor, Alex, pretty much all the common Russian names. And let's say if you want to print it out, but sort it, right? So let's refresh. As you can see, it's sourced by string. So Alex obviously comes first, then Dmitry, then Igor. So what it will do is compare the string array and sort it by those letters. So obviously letter A is first in the alphabet, right? So if you had another letter A here, for example, then it would compare the next letter. So ABC would come before, let's see, ABC, Alex, Dmitry, Igor, right? But here's a little confusing part about it, is that if you have an array of numbers, such as you would think that it would sort it in a way which is numerically from lower number to the highest number, but that's not the case. Let me show you why. Do you see the 4 is at the end? And the reason why is because the sort is converting all the elements into string, and then they're comparing their sequence based on UTF-16 code values. So basically it looks at it like a string, and the string 4 in the UTF-16 is behind the numbers 100, 124. So the way to fix this is you can write your own sorting function. So here's an example. So when you pass the sort your own function, and this is the elements we're comparing. So what we can do is return A minus B. So for example, if number is 1 and it gets compared with 100, well, 1 minus 100 is minus 99. It's a negative value, so therefore it's a smaller number, right? Let's refresh it just so you can see 1, 4, 100, 124. So you just wrote your custom function. So the way it works is basically like this. If A and B is less than 0, then put A before B. Okay? If B is greater than 0, then put B before A. Okay? If A and B is 0, then do nothing. Leave it as it is, unchanged. So basically, let's say A is 1 and 100 is B. So if the return value is less than 0, then we'll put 1 before 100, right? So the way we would do this here is return A minus B. Like 1 minus 100 will be, minus 99, right? So if we refresh, you see it's sorted correctly. But what if you did it different way, right? What if you did it where you're doing b minus a. So that would be, the first comparison would be 100 compared to 1. So 100 minus 1 would be 99. So if it's greater than 0, then it would put b before a. So it would put 100 and then 1, right? And then it would compare the rest. And so what that would do is sort it in descending order. So right now we have 1, 4, 100, 124. This will make it 124, 100, 4, and 1. Let me refresh. Let me show you. Boom, you see? So you can control your own sorting, how you want that array to be sorted. Hopefully that was clear. If not, just play around with it. It's pretty simple once you get a hang of it. Next is toString. And it's a pretty basic method, but basically what you can do is turn an array into a string. You see, we turn 1 to 3. Now you might be wondering, why do we need toString when we have join, or why do we need join method when we have toString? Well, because this turns the array to a string, and that's pretty much it. But the join, you can do things like you can join the array elements of your own separator when you turn the array into a string. So for example, let's have them all separated by a dash, right, in some spaces. So what will happen in this case? Boom. That's why there's join. toString is just the default method you can call to turn the array into a string. That's your introduction to 20 methods, because one of them is a string method. But let's say you learned 21 methods today, which I hope you did. And if you enjoyed the video, hit like, subscribe, and I'll see you soon.